All right, good day everyone. Welcome back to Solar Expanse. It's the beginning of 2029, and while we want to jump forward through to the 2030s, probably this episode, it's enough of a good news, bad news situation in 2029 that I thought I'd start here and give a little bit of a look forward.
Perhaps this is the fastest way for me to quickly explain what I mean. At this stage, the ESA has clearly been on a bit of a rampage since 2020, and in terms of the pace of progress, I'd say we're doing great. But the challenge is changing. We didn't have a huge amount of cash, so we needed the major payoffs, and we needed to find ways to cut costs, primarily by lifting less stuff into orbit, because, fuel ain't free. Now, courtesy of Brussels figuring out we might be onto something here and upping the funding, money is not so much the problem as having stuff to buy with it. Our planet produces a lot of stuff, but most of it's needed right here and isn't available for purchase by space agencies. And looking at the Earth economy in 2027, there are a couple of areas where shortages are already starting to emerge. We're already partway through dealing with a propellant gas crisis, and after buying out pretty much every other agency's stock as well, at this point, almost 100% of our propellant is coming from facilities on Mars, not Earth. But if we want to keep up the same frenetic pace of expansion, that's really just the first issue, not the last. European production of the specialised polymers used in solar sails was significant, but not so much when we started measuring sail size in square kilometres and the fleet in the dozens or hundreds. The specialised alloys required for our space program and the facilities necessary to work it aren't available in infinite supply, and perhaps most crushingly and immediately, there's the electronic shortage. Turns out the crisis here isn't just the civilian population trying to get their hands on RAM and GPUs, it's a major bottleneck in the specialised electronics that have powered a lot of our expansion so far. Automated mining modules, electronics. Mobile refineries, electronics. RTGs, specialised habitats, probes, you name it, electronics. In metaphorical terms, we have gone around the world buying every bloody stick of RAM we could find, and having a quick look through the other agencies, they're all pretty much out at this point, meaning we're all basically rationing until either the market unfreezes and more becomes available for sale, or we gear up our own production. Given I'm not in the mood to wait and leave this entire thing at the mercy of a market that may or may not agree to sell us the resources we need, self-sufficiency is the way we're going to go. Luna is going to handle silicate processing for photovoltaics with a backup site on Mars. Out of necessity, Earth is initially going to have to take the lead with polymer production with secondary sites on Mars and Ceres, while Mars becomes the primary centre for alloy production, and 21 Lutetia is our secondary site for electronics. Meanwhile, Lutetia will provide the rare metals to feed into these industrial processes, while the noble gases initially come from Mars and later from Ceres. It goes without saying that as the space side of this infrastructure is being built up, a little bit of everything is going to have to be made on Earth as well. It may be on the wrong side of a gravity well after all, but there's no place we can scale up faster, and nowhere has a more developed workforce. Earth also isn't as gated by the crushing power shortage issues that we're starting to experience on places like Mars. If we really intend to lower our reliance on Earth exports, we're going to need to find a way to generate a lot more juice up there. And so in the near term, we have a couple of technical objectives. Project Kepler is intended to get us out to asteroids, establish research facilities, and get the technical ball rolling. Using that momentum, we need to push forward at least two short-term technical priorities. The first is a final package of fleet upgrades, new engines for the Hermes to make them more efficient, and the new Athena. Working together, those two designs are meant to get us out to Jupiter and beyond. Not just for the obvious scientific discoveries that might be earned out there, but also to claim the resources that might be recoverable, and because a couple of very public, novel achievements is never a bad thing to have when you're negotiating funding. The next plan now then is meant to take us out to roughly 2035. During that window, we want to be completing more of our priority assignments, build up at least some in-house production of all of our critical inputs so we're no longer totally reliant on the global market, and then keep fanning out labs to push our science efforts as fast as they will go. Then, once we actually have the Athena and our new nuclear reactors, it'll be time to take stock again and plan for what comes next. We can't ignore the fact that even as we've raced ahead, others are following behind. 4 space agencies now have permanent colonies on the Moon. All of our competitors are planning on following our lead to Mars. And behind it all, the Earth economy is looking a fair bit rockier than it was a couple of years ago. So now is very much not the time to take our foot off the xenon gas. There's a job that needs to be done. Let's get back to it.
This is a perfect example of a Kepler mission. They're going to an asteroid, Ishtar 1. The solar sails carry out basically all the regular supplies. And then the Hermes follows up, carrying pretty much just the crew to operate the things we intend to build there, supplies, a couple of extra things if necessary. Ishtar doesn't have carbon, so we're taking some carbon with us, and noble gas necessary to get back. That's probably overcooked, actually. I think some of these other missions are less overcooked. Or what I found I started doing after that mission to be even more cautious with my fuel is I'd send the Hermes with an absolute minimum fuel load, and then I'd send the return fuel load on a solar sailor that would arrive shortly thereafter to make sure the Hermes wasn't tempted to burn any extra fuel, even if there was a miscalculation or a misclick. So that's what we're going to be doing in the background. We'll build out Mars and Lutetia. We'll research circuit production. We'll then kick that off on both Lutetia, which is getting a significant expansion in crew complement in order to allow it to produce circuits. And we'll also build up on Earth as well. As for Mars, Mars is going to solve the alloy problem. Mars is going to be the Forge world's true to its name. What that means is going to be a lot more metal mines, a lot more staff, and then eventually a lot more of these alloy smelting facilities. That's going to create economic problems of all of its own, particularly around power generation. But more on that in a couple of years. 1 year later, in January 2030, we get the technology to start manufacturing electronics. And there's a couple of things we're going to immediately do with that technology. What I'm doing in terms of researching next is jumping straight into optimized cell field. Originally, I did not think I was going to do this technology. 40% extra EV and 50% thrust on our electric drives. I thought we'd make do with what we had, especially since this is like nearly 3 years of research. However, because we're not going to have an alternative to Hermes for moving crew for a long time, getting the most out of our Hermes and eventually our Athena is absolutely critical. We need to be fuel efficient, and we need to be able to get to some of these outer objects. Like we want to be able to go to Jupiter, to Saturn. We want to be able to go out to the Trojans and the Greeks in order to plant research labs. More on that a little bit later on. So I'm going to bite the bullet and do optimized cell field. But that's a question for another time. The most immediate point is that on Earth, we have enough material to set up a couple of these, maybe 5 to start with. They're very expensive. Electronics factories. This will basically supply enough to keep our program going, and we might have some excess to throw back into the market too. Also, if we're producing our own electronics, at least temporarily on Earth, and not buying everything the world government offers up for sale, that might allow the other space agencies a chance to purchase a couple of circuits here and there. Ideally, I'd like them to buy from me and pay me top dollar because this is not a cheap program to get started, but we're going to make it work as best we can. Mars, 590 population, 51 metal mines and climbing. I'm going to try and push this north of 100 because in order to keep the metal going into the alloy forges at this relatively low efficiency, we need to be digging this stuff up faster. Fortunately with Mars, adding more people is really, other than the transportation costs, fairly cheap. Habitats can be built out of metal, which the people who arrive go into the habitats to work in the metal mines to extract the metal to build the habitats so we can have more people to work in the metal mines. I see no problem. Infinite growth is viable. We have more than enough carbon coming out of the moons, which means we can continue scaling up hydroponics, and one hydroponic facility on Mars with like five employees can feed 140 to 200 of their comrades. It's really easy to scale this up, so we're just going to keep bringing in more waves. Every transfer window, there'll be another 100 to 200 people traveling from Earth. And as they arrive, the Hermes fill up in Mars orbit, grab some of the noble gases that are stocking up. There's 1.7 kilotons there at the moment. They fill their cargo bay, they fill their tanks, they travel back to Earth orbit, and that creates the funding, the fuel fund, if you like, for every mission that isn't going to Mars. You know, like all of these ones that are going out to research labs to set up out in the belt. Once we get self-field, Hermes will be a much higher performing design, which opens up the possibility of doing some interesting one-way research lab deliveries. Our solar sails can handle everything in the inner solar system, but they can't go out further, which is a bit unfortunate because if you're looking at places that you might want to put a self-sustaining research lab, that water-carbon combination is really common out on these things, the Greeks and the Trojans. You can't get a solar sailor out there because you are way out in the void. Also, getting a Hermes out here with anything like a useful load and then getting it back again, pretty demanding. But what I think can happen, and I took this idea from a comment and then did some math, if we get optimized cell field, a Hermes might be able to get out here by itself, carrying enough fuel to make it to the asteroid, and then most of what it needs to set up a research facility, everything it needs to set up a research facility, if you assume you then disassemble the Hermes. So if you send 50 alloys, for example, you need 100. The Hermes is made out of 100 alloys. You get 50 back when you disassemble one. You basically use the Hermes itself as a delivery system for resources. Basically, the people would arrive, they disassemble their ship and use that to create the local facilities. That's a possibility, but I think to do it effectively, we need the higher performance of optimized cell field. Hence the investment there. Anyway, that's the immediate plan. I won't go through the solar sail logistics just yet. Let me build up a few more of them. For the moment, let's see if we can get Mars over this threshold, and we need to trigger this Lutetia mission. All right, bingo. Asteroid mining complete. So we're about to have another one of those experiences where the ESA tells me to do something, and I think we immediately cash in because I just got 3.5 million for bringing a little bit of rare metal back from Lutetia. Clicked OK, and this popped up because apparently the next contract was asteroid mining. While we've examined the potential of mining asteroids, we need to establish a permanent mining base on one, deploy construction equipment to the asteroid belt so that we may begin building mining infrastructure. The complicating factor with that $7 million contract is that I already have people there with mining infrastructure set up. Construction equipment, remote mining module, and a manned rare metal extractor. So, 7 million more in the pocket. There's another one, okay. To oversee our mining enterprise, we require a crew of miners and facilities to house them. This way we'll be able to establish a 24/7 resource extraction and uninterrupted supply. Outpost and humans. We have both of that. All right, so I've just walked in. They've said, hey, can you do this? And I've said, yes, money, please. And they've said, yeah, of course, we'll fund you for doing it. I've said, no, I've done it, now give me the money. With a crew on site, we can optimize the resource extraction and oversee the entire process. Full-scale exploitation can proceed. The next mission now is asteroid supply chain. Deliver 2,000 rare metal directly to Earth. I assume it doesn't have to come from Lutetia, but Lutetia is the most obvious candidate and has already mined almost 3 kilotons. So we just need to find a way to get this stuff back to Earth. Fortunately, what have we got? There's a whole bunch of solar sailors currently heading towards slow boating out to Lutetia that will arrive early 2031. And there's a Hermes with crew that will arrive in November. So that's what, 400 tons, 800 tons, another 300, can't use all of it. About another 100 here. So about half of this, we've already got the cargo capacity on the way. This is just bringing in all the things we need for the extra crew and also for those electronics factories that we want to set up on Lutetia. I don't want to make Lutetia the main electronics production hub, but it was the quickest place to get going, which had all the resources local. We just bring in some noble gas, we manufacture, we're good to go. Logistically, it's a bit annoying because of its position and its orbit, but resource-wise, it's ideal. So yeah, we'll bring those ships in, we'll transport those rare materials back, and they've also given us a Beyond Mars mission, which is send a spacecraft to a moon of Jupiter. Now, the only problem with giving me a Beyond Mars mission to send something to Jupiter is that I've already gotten to most of these places. But there is one moon that I didn't go to, one object I didn't go to straight away. So I will spec... There we are. I will spec a mission out here, won't take too long to arrive. That should cash me in. But I think the next one on the agenda in terms of big payday is Mars City. I'm kind of tempted to build up a really big cash flow because what's going to happen is as I'm expanding my industry, my upkeep in the background, which I contained previously by not overdeveloping Earth industry and buying resources instead, is going to go absolutely ballistic. Plus, I'm paying for all these research labs that I'm setting up. Plus, I'm paying for all the sailors I'm setting up. Plus, Mars itself is going to have a whole bunch of upkeep. I mean, 56 mines, 30 mines, more building. The upkeep is going to be there. I just think the economy is going to be able to sustain it as long as we keep cashing in contracts. And selling resources to the others has been very lucrative. Particular, selling to the Chinese has made me a fortune in places. The AI, obviously early access, one of the last things you would optimize is AI because you keep changing the rule set up to that point. But if we were not playing the game, if you told me that by 2030, someone would have a permanent colony on the moon set up, powering itself, doing resource extraction, that'd be a pretty good effort. The Chinese Space Agency has 10 people living permanently on the moon. They have a little outpost. They don't have hydroponics set up yet, but they do have fuel production and water extraction set up locally. So they are making their own fuel. They're not doing that badly. And as we get closer to the point of the next wave arriving at Mars, that'll be in September, you can see it's not just us, it's multiple ships of our Mars Wave 6 and Mars Wave 7 arriving with a whole bunch of people on board. This is becoming almost routine. Every Mars window, more humans ship up from Earth as part of the European Space Agency's effort to colonize Mars. They ship out, those ships come back loaded with noble gases. But it's also NASA and a couple of others have launched as well. But this whole process does illustrate part of the loop we find ourselves in, the challenge we're facing in terms of our space program. We're expanding in space to meet the needs of our expanding space program, but for every resource problem we patch, we potentially open up another one until we find a technical solution to the problem. For Mars, for example, the problem right now is that we're in a power crunch. We've got the entire population working, so yes, we also have a workforce problem, but that one we can solve quickly. Bringing on foundries, bringing on alloy production is really squeezing the existing power generation infrastructure. For now, temporarily, we can solve this problem by just building more solar panels or bringing in more RTGs. Luna produces a lot of glass, and the RTGs from Earth are still the bedrock of our power generation system. And so, of course, right now we have the money, we're bringing in even more. You may notice a lot of my cash is gone. It's being invested in a whole bunch of stuff across the board. RTGs are part of that. However, RTGs require rare and valuable material. If we look at what an RTG is made of, there it is. It requires 70 exotic alloys, which we can't manufacture yet, 10 fissile material, and 35 tons of electronics. These things are incredibly expensive. So too are our mobile habitats, by the way, which are also very, very electronics hungry. This pushes us into manufacturing more of our own resources in these hungry categories to support the ongoing scaling, which potentially opens up additional resource strains. We're nowhere near the point of those exotic alloys being a compression point yet, and I've stockpiled 5 kilotons of them just in case, which should last us a good long while, because I don't want everyone else buying them out and to then find out I need them later, only to have no money. So we're now vertically integrated. We're becoming an industrial producer on Earth and in space, and we're also big in the stockpiling and speculation game. I am absolutely spending government money on warehouses and warehouses and warehouses full of material I might need later. So we can patch the Mars power issue with more RTGs that are arriving in September. That's fine. Build some more solar panels, bring in some more workforce. Eventually, though, we need some way to generate a shit ton of power on Mars. A nuclear reactor on Mars would generate 500 power. Yes, it would require 200 people to run, but we can get the people. 500 power is enough to scale for a long time. As I said earlier, this would be a short-term solution. The long-term solution would be probably something more elegant, perhaps beamed power, for example. But for the moment, we're going to make this work. But I just thought I'd highlight that as a demonstration of how by solving one problem, you potentially create another economic bottleneck, and we're really having to act on all of them at the same time. Speaking of which, we have more arrivals coming in on Mars. Okay. I believe, though, yes, some of those were delivered directly to the surface, so let's dump the others down. Get in your re-entry capsules. Down you go. Done. After so many years, we have fulfilled a great dream. Mars has become a home to thousands, and we're here to stay. Grow even further. Until we take over the entire planet. I like the ambition. Oh, wow. Okay. Terraformation. Terraformation is the process of making objects more habitable. The more habitable an object becomes, the fewer supplies humans need in order to survive there. Habitability can be improved by adjusting atmospheric pressure and composition, magnetic field strength, temperature, and the amount of water available so they resemble the conditions of the species' home planet as closely as possible. So, Earth. To achieve this, one can build specialized facilities and transport resources from other objects, or even drop an entire asteroid. Artificial magnetosphere for Mars. 800 million contract. This is like somewhere between 800 billion and 8 trillion, depending on where you want to move the decimal point and what unit you want to assign. Checks out, because I think they're about to make me terraform Mars. Unlocks game start date, race beyond 2300. For Mars to maintain an atmosphere and our colonists to be safe from radiation, we need to create an artificial magnetosphere. A network of field generators around the planet will let us settle and terraform more easily. They will be costly to build and maintain, but necessary for further steps. Construct a planet. We'll look at that in a moment. Decrease radiation below 6. Build a planetary magnetosphere generator. Whoa. So this costs 36 kilotons of metal and 240 power per day to run. So up here we've got habitability. Whether people can land at all, which is only possible above absolutely dismal levels. Asteroids are not habitable, but at least you can land there. Some places like Venus you can't. And it seems to be a product of multiple factors. Temperature, the composition of your atmosphere, pressure, which speaks to how much atmosphere you have. So is your atmosphere good, and then how much of it do you have? Gravity, which is you're never going to be able to solve. I don't think there's an artificial gravity tech. We can't do artificial gravity on Mars in the near future. Water and radiation. So Mars's current radiation level is 10, as compared to Earth's, which is 1. A planetary magnetosphere generator reduces it by 0.6, which would get us down to 9.4, and the goal is to reduce it below. So we're going to need a bunch of these things. We're going to need a bunch of those things. Here's the tech. Oh, casual 2,700 day tech with all the prereqs. Oh, there's also an orbital version. Minus 7.7 radiation for 30 kilotons of alloy. You know, at the start of the game, I was giving the ESA shit for not being ambitious and us getting ahead of contracts. This is just them saying, look, screw you guys. If you want to keep doing this, if you want to do the 1,000 people by 2031, screw it. Just go build me an artificial magnetosphere on Mars. If you do it, we'll give you, like, all the money. Good luck. I am here for it, though. I don't think we rush into that because we do not have the industrial base or the technology. We need technology to support this. We need industry to support this. So I think my immediate objective is instead, let's do some of these beyond Mars contracts, chalk some easy money up there. Let's just focus on keeping the build-up going in the background. And pretty much my number one priority is I'm just going to keep, as you can see from all the ships that are sailing out all over the place, I am just going to keep spamming out research labs to get these techs as fast as possible. I need Athena, I need optimized cell field. Also, side note, Roscosmos apparently got their hands on some electronics they're sending to Luna. It would be a real... I really wish there was a mechanic to make something happen to this shipment, because 10 tons, not 10 kilotons, 10 tons of electronics right now, the RAM-hungry people of Earth would pay a lot for that stuff. Time skip is continuing. January 2032. Our probe has arrived in the Jovian system, triggering that mission. So immediately they've given me 2 more. 5.5 million to send a probe and send it out to Saturn. And 5.5 million if I land people on Callisto. This is a bit of an interesting question, because Callisto, some of these places look great. Like Callisto has metal and water, so you only need to bring in carbon. You could then potentially use it to expand into some of these other locations. Like Ganymede, for example, is one of those places that can support a small science crew forever, because you have water and carbon available locally. And it could have the same relationship that Phobos has with Mars, is the relationship that Ganymede could have with Callisto. Ganymede could be the supplier of the carbon, while Callisto supplies the metal, the water, and sustains the large population. Callisto is also not awful compared to the other Jovian moons, so far as human habitability is concerned. It's still awful, but you know, we're making do with what we got. As for Saturn, it seems like the goal here is going to be Titan, which has a really thick atmosphere and reduced radiation, and gravity is, well, it's still like 10% of Earth, a bit more. So it's not great, but at least there's water and carbon here. You can sustain a population. You could mine noble gas. The problem is it's a small initial noble gas deposit, then a very large but very inefficient one, and there's no metal available locally. So we might do a Titan landing for the research and for the funding, but that's about it. I think Callisto Ganymede is a good combo to go for, but for the moment, I'm going to shoot my shot at some of the asteroids while I'm waiting to spec up a mission. I want optimized cell field before I launch too much of this, And I'm also ambitious over here for Mercury as an automated outpost, although I want to test a trick. Someone gave me an idea and I want to test it based on the way these work. Mercury is currently incredibly hostile, like so incredibly hostile. Whereas in Terra Invicta, you just need to build lots and lots and lots and lots of radiation shielding. In Solar Expanse, you can't even land people on Mercury if you can get there in the first place. It's super DV intensive. I don't think a Hermes can get there, even with the gravity assist, without this final engine tech. But I think with the final engine tech, maybe if we do a good flight plan and we heavily underload a Hermes, we might be able to get down here. Solar sails, however, can get here super easily. They perform amazingly since we're right near the sun. So we'll bring in a whole bunch of automated modules. We'll start producing resources on Mercury just because it has some potential too in the long run. Yeah. Timestamp now July 2032. Like I said, I want to get to 2034 or 2035, then we'll slow down. Couple of milestones. Letitia is now producing electronics. The advantage here is when you bring in a resupply mission, something like carbon, because electronics are so value dense, essentially, it doesn't take that much to then ship that back to Mars or Earth. So even though the logistics of being out here are not great, they're workable. The other highlight is that we are about to finish optimized self-field technology. So let's let that tick for just 3 days. Done. Okay, so that's going straight into the Athena, but let's check our Hermes now. Oh, that's great. So the Hermes is now pulling 45 kms exhaust velocity with 256 newtons of thrust. That's closer to the performance we're going to need. Meanwhile, when we finish the Athena, remember the Athena stats didn't factor in this upgrade. So the Athena is now going to have 135 kms of EV. That's incredible. 384 newtons of thrust. Okay, that's not so incredible, but for an electric drive, that's pretty incredible. So I think we go straight into the Athena, 911 days, and then we grab nuclear power. It will be less because we are shooting out lots and lots of missions. Now, I have exhausted candidates where they had both water and carbon. So instead, we're having to land with significant amounts of supplies. So if we look at here we are. The landfall mission for this asteroid, for example, is bringing about 160 tons of supplies across the board. That should be good for decades. All of these ones where we had water and carbon present, you now have base facilities up, research labs either produced or in production, and they're going to set up their hydroponics as well to make these self-sustaining. These people are now happy. If you want a nice isolated workplace where you don't have to worry about anyone other than a very select group of people for a long period of time, this is it. You can just hang out here, you can do science, steady paycheck, about 10 years will come get you. And you can finally spend the paycheck, which you have nothing to do with while you're on the asteroid doing science. But hey, for some people, it's probably great. My thought process now is the shipyards are actually changing their tasks in Earth orbit for a very simple reason. One, we can't keep producing the sails at the current rate because polymer is becoming a bottleneck. So we're going to have to slow sail production now that I've turned out something like 100 of them. Earth is producing some polymers. We're going to produce some polymers elsewhere, but we can't keep up with the frenetic pace before because I've taken kilotons of Earth supply, bought up the stockpile, and then turned it into spacecraft. We're going to slow down. The second thing is we do actually need more Hermes. They're high performance now. And it's not just that we need them for crew delivery missions to all these asteroids or to Mars or to make their way out to the objectives in the Saturn subsystem or the Jovian subsystem. It's for those one-way deliveries I was talking about. If we want to get out to, let's just say we wanted to go to Paris, this one out here, one-way delivery would need its own Hermes. In total, there are 6 candidates. So I'm going to need 6 one-way delivery Hermes to get those 6 research labs done. But I think for an 18% research boost, that kind of effort is worth the noble gases intended. And because we don't need to bring the ships back, the fuel requirements are actually significantly lower. Now, Paris is that orbital, that's an awful orbit. So this one might be easier. We'll get the low-hanging fruit first. But I think the intention has to be to go out to each of them. And with a sufficiently high-performance electric drive and no requirement to get back, we can probably do it. Which gets us to 2033 and me wanting to test something. Because I'm looking at the way these work. This is the habitability that I talked about before. It's temperature, atmospheric composition, pressure, so the amount of atmosphere, gravity, water, radiation. These are, I think, independent values, and they're interacting to produce a habitability score. Mercury's is not very high, and fixing Mercury in any way would be an incredible exercise. Like, it's too close to the sun, it's always going to be hot, it's always going to be an irradiated ball. I'm not sure how many magnetosphere generators you would need. Mercury is always going to be a nightmare. But given how resource rich it is, I'd like to at least be able to, as a challenge mode, consider landing some people here. So I want to try something. We can't solve the temperature. We can't solve the pressure. We can't solve gravity, although gravity's okay. It's about 1/3 of Earth. Yeah, no, it's actually pretty good. We can't solve the water problem without bringing a crap ton of it in. We would need to mine it, and even then there's not enough. You need to mine it and then use it to create oceans or deposits or something. And the radiation is just awful. But what about this one here, composition? So Earth has a... Yeah, this is mislabeled. Earth does not have a 0.2% oxygen atmosphere. Earth has a 20% oxygen atmosphere, roughly. I'm hoping the game wants 20%, not 0.2%, because what I've done is I brought 4 tons of nitrogen gas, which I extracted on Earth, and 1 ton of oxygen from Earth. And my understanding is, if I drag these gases into these resource deposits, I will release that, and that will become the planet's atmosphere. Now, hypothetically, if I release 4 tons of nitrogen gas into an atmosphere and 1 ton of oxygen, I now technically have a 20% oxygen atmosphere, right? It's not much of an atmosphere. I mean, it's 5 tons of gas spread over an entire planet. But it is 20% oxygen, right? Oh no, the answer is yes. That's hilarious. Okay, this is a function of how this system is designed, but I find it hilarious. Okay, maybe before full release, you should make it so this only counts if the atmosphere is, you know, a reasonable quantity. Because at the moment, I just puff some gas out into the void, and now Mercury is still hopelessly incompatible with life. Like, it is still an awful place to be. As bad as the asteroids, worse than the asteroids. Awful, awful, awful. But it's not so awful I can't order a manned mission. So, hypothetically, now I can improve this with gravity assist, but let's just test how bad the situation is. Let's put dummy cargo. Dummy cargo, 200 tons of alloy. Not enough thrust, insufficient propellant. Okay, we can solve the propellant question, but the point is insufficient thrust. You can't do it. So a Hermes with 200 tons of cargo can't dive to Mercury. Maybe with a gravity assist. A Hermes with 100 tons of cargo cannot dive to Mercury. A Hermes with 20 tons of cargo and the top engine upgrade can dive Mercury. So, if I had a pair, if I send everything I need using the sails, because that's super easy, a pair of Hermes could then hypothetically transport 40 or 50 crew necessary to run a research lab, a hydroponics, maybe a couple of mines. Okay, my plan was to keep jumping ahead until we got the Athena and make this sort of the Athena episode in the inflection point, but Mercury has gotten me excited, so I think this is where we're going to start slowing down and covering developments more fully. What I have managed to do is spec up Mercury landfall. This is not that expensive in terms of propellant, but it's very demanding in terms of thrust. We are pushing the Hermes design to its absolute limit pulling this off, but it's a relatively short transfer. This will bring 25 brave individuals to Mercury, because now that they have their emotional support gases, they're happy to go there. I've already delivered 2 mobile habitats, and there's more missions that are going to bring in construction modules, more mining, RTG, the things that we generally need. We're going to have to slowly relay, which won't be particularly fuel cheap, but if we want to build up Mercury in terms of the human presence there, we're going to need to do it in relay. I think we can do it. We're stretching the Hermes, but it's going to work. Mercury has some really good metal deposits. if we're talking about, it's also much more accessible than Letitia. Mercury is a less habitable, but very, very well resourced and importantly, very accessible Letitia. Whereas 21 Letitia is extremely difficult to get to for our solar sailors and a moderate difficulty for our Hermes. Mercury is very difficult for our Hermes, but it is a walk in the absolute park for our solar sailors. And if we're talking about a hub that will potentially have EM catapults and be shooting material out, Mercury is really promising. Why am I focused on Mercury? Because if we're going to build this Martian magnetosphere, mining all that metal on Mars itself is going to be an ask. I now have 110 metal mines on Mars, and they are turning out on net like 7 on net metal a day because they have to feed the alloy forges, and the alloy forges will continue to respond. And we're going to need the alloy forges to eventually build the orbital one, which is made out of alloy. So more metal needs to come from somewhere. Mercury has 750 kilotons in a 0.3 deposit and 37 kilotons in a 0.8 deposit. So this just calls out to me. Plus, there's enough water here that with some ice mines, we can sustain a population using farming for a while. Eventually, they're going to exhaust this. But 23 kilotons, that's a lot of water, assuming we're willing to dedicate it to supplies. Plus, we'll bring in a whole bunch more automated mining modules because they give good returns here. And this might be a good electronics manufacturing place and, more importantly, a good metal supply base for Mars. So Mercury landfall is now in process. We've also spec'd out a mission to Titan to get the Titan landing mission. The reason I've gone Titan first is it'll take longer to get there than it will to the Jovian system. And the intention here is less grandiose. Whereas I want to get to Callisto, start mining, and then start expanding that out across the whole system. I want to grab all these. And that would really, really benefit from having an Athena, like an Athena-Stratos combination in the area to ferry supplies between them. My ambitions for the moment in Saturn's system are much more subdued. It's to get out to these self-sustaining locations, set up research labs the same way you would anywhere else. The reason to go to Titan earlier is because we're getting paid. As my upkeep goes up, I'm very, very happy to take the money. So we're going out to Titan. We'll land a number of people. This is the standard package, if you like. People to run a hydroponics, people to run a research lab, spares to run maybe one mine if we need it as overflow. You can see we've got extra metal supplies and we can disassemble the crew compartment. So that is happening. I have also started looking at these Trojans a little bit more. And I believe the first one, this one, the Paris mission will arrive in 2035. It's departing in January next year. And this is what we managed to fit into a single Hermes. I think it's enough. You have enough crew to run the research, one crew to run the hydroponics, construction module probe, 3 mines to get them the water and the carbon they need to run it, radioisotope generator, mobile habitat. That'll provide accommodations for 20 of the 25 people. You disassemble the Hermes, that gives you the remaining 50 alloys and the electronics and rares you need along with the 10 glass to build the research lab, 50 supplies to tide them over. I've also got one target of opportunity here. I keep an eye on this view because Apophis came around and was just in a perfect position for us to quickly jump over and do some very short trips with the sails and Hermes that we had available. So we'll colonize that as well. We can't actually... I thought there was more than just fissiles here, so I shouldn't have brought the mining modules because I don't need them. I can't mine them yet until we unlock the ability to mine fissile material. So what will happen is I'll get the solar sails to just remove those, take those back to Earth. We don't need them. I'm going to keep an eye on the asteroids to make sure they don't run out of supplies. Most of them are getting like 20 or 30 years worth. They'll just need a solar sail to touch up at some point. But also, to protect against the worst case scenario, all of these asteroid bases, except for the Trojans, have enough habitation for all of the crew. And what that means is if crew run out of supplies, but they have a habitat, they don't work, but they also don't die because they just mark Watney the situation rather than working. So they make space potatoes. Life goes on until the solar sails arrive and then they go back to work. So that's the plan. I'll wait for supplies for the lab to get along here. But let's also have a quick look at the Martian and Earth economies. Mars is up to 110 metal mines, 15 alloy smelters. It is full employment with 1,000 staff, so you can bet that additional waves of Martian settlers are on the way. And I'm just going to have to keep piling them on. because we are employing people basically as quickly as they're landing, even accommodating them. I've got accommodations for 1,500. I'm going to 1,700 because I already have plans as to how to employ 2,000 people on Mars. 110 metal mines, 15 alloy smelteries, 35 noble gas extractors. So we're pulling 3.5 tons a day of that out of the ground. That deposit will deplete in 33 years. By that point, we need to have either transitioned off the ion drives or we need to have series operating in a big way. I think we'll do it with a number of years to spare. Keep in mind, noble gases are also necessary for electronics production. So I don't want to use all of this as propellant. If we budget, say, half of this, for 15 years we can burn it on propellant. We then have 20 kilotons to use on electronics. That's still great. 1 polymer production, 1 electrolysis plant, 2 glass kilns. What we do need to do is grab these automatic mining modules, lift them up into orbit. We don't need them anymore. Humans are doing the mining. And we can cart those over to Phobos in order to dial up the carbon production even higher. So that is exactly what I will do. We also need to do a supply run. Most of my supply runs are automatic now. I'm just using cyclical missions. Phobos's resupply is not automatic, so I'll fly them another 100 tons of supplies, and life is good. Right as I say that, I actually realized we've just had a Martian mission arise, which should drop some more humans onto the planet. Welcome to Mars, additional workforce. You are most welcome. There we are. So we will put them to work, and that frees up a Hermes in orbit to do an Earth return mission. The standard here is you load the entire cargo hold with noble gas. Then you go to the mission. We'll be conservative on fuel usage. Because like you go now and you get there in February 2035, or you go in 2035 and you get there soon after in 2035 because of the way transfer windows work. You then load up the maximum amount of propellant in the tank. So you carry that as well. And this ship on net is moving back 550 tons almost of noble gas propellant. So unfortunately, they don't get back until 2035, but that's the nature of space travel. The designs are as good as we can make them, but until we get something with more oomph that can move crew, this is the best we got. I've just looked at the contracts and decided, look, I have enough fuel in Earth orbit. Even with committing to the mission, I have a kiloton in reserve, which I'm going to use for other things. Let's go to Callisto soon. Yes, we'll need the Athenas to handle colonizing the system in bulk. We can go around, we can shuffle resources, plant labs, and plant the materials for labs on multiple moons, and then bring a Hermes up just carrying crew in order to come in behind. But let's just get Callisto started. Let's get the metal mining. Let's get a research base established, and let's get the contract funding. Because I'm also interested in what comes next. The other thing I need to do is finally complete this asteroid supply chain contract. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff on the way to Earth, and a whole bunch of stuff on the way to Letitia. It's going to take a while. Those will arrive in 2033 September. It will then take a while to sort of route those back. But we're getting very close to asteroid supply chain and unlocking whatever trading on Earth is. Because if it means fixing and rebalancing the bloody Earth economy, I'm game. And I'm starting to see the results of selling some electronics back into the market in terms of what the other factions are doing. What I do need to do, though, is lift a whole bunch of it in orbit and send it to Mars. Because after Athena, we need a nuclear power plant. And in order to build a nuclear power plant, we need alloys, which we'll manufacture in situ. The advanced materials I've already sent. The crew is already on its way, including a new reinforcement wave that I have dispatched of, I think, another 400 people. But we need the electronics. We need the electronics and the fissile materials to power it. So I think a nuclear reactor on Mars is a heck of a milestone. Just need to get to it. Okay, I know this is weird, but we have arrivals at Mercury. Let's drop everything down from orbit, because not everything arrived on the planet itself. We'll add the crew compartments, the construction equipment, one more mining module, both radioisotope generators. We also brought, we'll drop the glass, we'll drop the alloys, all 100 tons of them, we'll need them. Just because we have everything arriving pretty much at the same time as the initial crew. The very, very brave crew, might I add. Okay, let's drop that to the surface. Then we'll organize what's going on in orbit. That'll happen on the 19th. Okay. So I decided to send 4 Hermes, which means we have the 50 crew allotment. At the moment, we have to handle this quickly because they will drain a lot of supplies given the horrific conditions of Mercury. 40 of the 50 are already in mobile habitats, which helps. Let's throw the outpost up immediately. Then, I know it's going to take a while. How long do you have? Let's just see how quickly you're eating this food. No, you're not eating 10 tons a day. Okay, 3.4 years. We have a little bit of time, as I said. Let's throw the research lab up. Then you're going to want the hydroponics, and that's your initial survival scheme. That's everything you need for the moment. Then we can start talking about mining. Really rewarding mining. So I've got 4 mobile habitats from memory building on Earth at the moment. If we assume 2 of them are going out to continue our campaign in the Greeks and the Trojans, all 3 Greeks, well, the Greeks with water and carbon are conquered. Paris is on its way, which leaves these 2. Okay, so if we have 2 there, that means 2 can be allocated to Mercury. That means we can scale up the crew to 90 in the not so distant future. We're going to get so much mining done. It's going to be glorious. As for where that mining is going, we're in a Ceres transfer window. So Ceres is receiving some deliveries. Its wave 2 is going to increase the population by about 110. And then we have multiple shipments, solar sails just carrying so much metal. Well, it feels like a lot of metal. Metal is very tonnage intensive to transport. That's going to be turned into noble gas mines. Already got 2 in construction, but we want to scale Ceres up to the point where it has 20 noble gas extractors. The sooner it can take some of the pressure off Mars for extraction, the better, which means using these transport windows when we've got them. This is what the sails are good for. Athena will be fantastic for it, and is the last thing I want to come along this episode, but that's still 315 days away. For the moment, courtesy of the emotional support ton of oxygen released into its atmosphere, Mercury is now colonized. And if you're thinking, how quick are the solar sails getting from Mercury to Earth? Because this is all about, yes, the survival challenge, but this is all about logistics. It is a 3-month journey under current conditions to get solar sails from Mercury to Earth. Now I am convinced that's too fast. I'm convinced that's too fast because solar sail missions I've heard about which consider Mercury are in like the year range. But then again, who knows how big and advanced and efficient our super ESA mega multi-100-ton solar sails are. So who knows? Either way, it makes the logistics much more attractive. If you want an example of the AI being, and specifically the CNSA AI, being incredibly generous with resource sales, they put up a buy order for fuel on Mars, I presume for some mission or another. They're willing to pay $169,000 per ton. That's $33 million for 200 units of fuel. I'll take it, but they're far more generous than the other factions. I do think that there might be something funny going on the back end here, but either way, I'll absolutely sell fuel to the Chinese for 33 mil. I'm not trying to exploit the system, but if they're offering to buy at that rate, I'm going to take it because I'm going to then use that to push right back into the European economy back home, scale up Earth and Mars, and then have more things to sell. I also just thought I'd take a moment to zoom out and show this is what the inner solar system in particular looks like right now. There are tracks everywhere. Some of those are recurring missions, some of those are manual, so it's a bit of a mixture. But you can see, every time there's a launch window, a whole bunch of traffic peels off and they form these sort of patterns. So that's Ceres. All the resupply runs for Ceres and Letitia, hooking out to intercept it. This will be activity. This will mostly be return activity to Mirth, rare metals from Letitia, or solar sails diving in towards Mercury to deliver mobile habitats and more goods before we fly in additional personnel. For the moment, though, I'm not in a rush to send more people to Mercury until we're employing the current ones. One oversight was we need more construction modules because the construction is very slow at the moment, so I'm shipping 2 more in because I see the possibilities. It's so close to Earth for sailors that we can feed it. It's not that much of a logistical issue. We'll bring carbon in en masse if we need to. We can bring water in if we need to, although the water is available locally. Even though there is a massive premium, it's resource intensive to keep people here, they consume more supplies. Because it's so close and the return on investment is so high because these deposits are so good, I reckon we do it. The only challenge here is the habitats. Now, there are better ones we could get. For example, we could get into subterranean habitats that are good for these kind of environments. Colony construction is a 590-way tech that would give us something like that. But I think it's more important to focus after Project Athena. I think it's more important to get power generation and then rail launches, so we can electromagnetically throw cargo between these various locations. I think that's probably more urgent than getting better HABs, but I could see the argument. Where are you going, Roscosmos? Roscosmos is going out to an asteroid with 3 mining modules. I'm guessing that's an asteroid mining contract. Well, have fun. You're still doing it with chemical rockets. You will be there in 2035. In terms of how the other space programs are going while we wait for the Athena to complete, on Mars, we have a Russian, Chinese, NASA, but not a SpaceX colony on the moon. I'll have a look at that asteroid in a moment. Of these, it looks like everyone's basically gone just the missions, but they don't have enough crew to run their research lab super efficiently. NASA hasn't quite built their research lab yet. Not bad for 2034 by real world standards. Obviously very, very far behind us. The AI is not quick off the mark. On Mars, no colonists yet for Roscosmos. 20 Chinese colonists on the moon. They've got an RTG, an outpost, so some of them are accommodated. They're mining, refining, and we know they had some fuel because they bought it from us. I don't know where it's gone. NASA doesn't have colonists yet. They just have automated facilities. So the only ones who've actually colonized Mars so far are the Chinese, but we'll keep an eye on them. One thing I'm interested in is when NASA starts to roll out its nuclear-powered craft, its Prometheus, because they should be coming up on it relatively soon, I would imagine, and it'll be much more efficient than sending 5 Stratos rockets out. I'm not sure if it's because their build order favors the Stratos or because we completely strangled the noble gas market. But I haven't been seeing Hermes. I've been seeing chemical rockets across the board, both from people I'd expect to see that from, Solex with their more efficient ones, but also everyone else as well. Okay, we're about to have a moment, a culmination of so much research activity. Fairly well timed. Oh, hydroponics is done on Mercury, distracting us from the moment. But that's okay. Let's just get them making conventional metal for the moment, and let's talk about how we're actually going to get it to the rest of the... I suppose we could use sailors to get it out if we can get enough quantities of it. But I'm really interested in mag rails. But let's get Athena first and not get ahead of ourselves. There is some massive fuel deliveries heading from Mars back to Terra, which is what we'll fuel them with. Okay, so now nuclear power is 171 days away, courtesy of some of the extra research labs we've got, and we can finally build this thing. The Athena is actually not that much more expensive. 15 extra electronics, but you miss the rare materials. It's not an expensive ship, but it dispenses with the crew support. You don't have the gravity ring. You don't have any of that. You just have a super efficient drive with the radiators and fuel that you need. Cargo capacity 500, propellant capacity 180. So it can carry less propellant, but makes it go a lot further. The whole thing only weighs 30 tons. It's mostly cargo carrying capacity and 135 kms EV. Now, the question is how many of them we're going to be able to fuel. We want these for the Jovian system. We want these for Saturn. We want these potentially for all kinds of runs. I don't see a reason that I wouldn't start with at least, say... No, we've got the supplies. Let's start with 6. These will get split into teams. One is going to be used and dedicated to series to get the metal flowing more rapidly so that we can get those noble mines going. We need to solve the fuel problem. Mars alone isn't doing it, but I don't want to scale Mars's gas extraction too much, or we're going to exhaust those resource deposits. Another group is going to get dedicated to Saturn, another group probably to Jupiter. And saying that makes me want 8, so I have 2 for general purpose work, Earth, Mars, tanker, whatever duty. The ships, we can afford these resources, that's fine. We have 1.76 kilotons of electronics in Earth orbit now. On Earth now, because we're producing something like 3 tons per day. I'm okay with that. Next, we're going to go nuclear power. I've already got a wave of additional colonists, I think 300 additional colonists on their way to Mars, because someone needs to work in the nuclear reactor complex. All the resources necessary to build the thing are either in place or on their way. For example, the electronics, those are on their way. The alloys have already been produced in the Martian foundries, and I think we'll produce more foundries. Power has long been a major limiter, along with workforce. We've got more of both incoming, so I like where we are. On a research note, we've hit a whole bunch of asteroids, and all of these Greeks and Trojans have all either now got I don't think any of them have their bases up yet, but they all have missions arriving. Between 2035 and 2038 is when those various missions arrive. They'll build their labs and help push us a little bit faster in the research game. I think the summary of where we're at now is that we're solving more of our industrialization bottlenecks. We're not immediately being choked by the shortage of electronics on Earth. We're still gated by a whole bunch of things, with the big one being logistics outside of the inner part of the inner solar system. The sails are great for taking us to Mercury. The sails are great, kinda, for ferrying between Earth and Mars. They've done a decent job on all these asteroids. I'm really grateful for what the sails have done, even if we can't keep producing an infinite number of them, because polymer production is still scaling, and even then, it's expensive to run. What we needed was an answer for further out. With the Athena, we've now got it. What we also needed was an answer for power. We're going to have that too. But beyond that, what we are sorely missing is the ability to move material between locations without using fuel and without having to use our ships. That means, I think, next up, we want to go mass driver into electromagnetic catapult. Mass driver lifts stuff into orbit. Electromagnetic catapult fires it between objects, as long as there's no atmosphere. Now, there's a lot of technologies that are prerequisites for that we can go first. What we'll do is we'll put the technology in the lineup. Great. Now we can prioritize these because a bunch of them have side benefits. High temperature superconductors, for example, is a quick tech that increases all power production by 10. Reduces maintenance cost of all facilities by 10. Reduces maintenance cost of all facilities by 20. See where I'm going with this? So what I'd like to do, something like that. Let's get the techs that benefit our economy on the way first. Let's rack these up. I would have liked to go, for example, mining efficiency technologies. I would like to go into nuclear drives. They're nice to have. I'd like to get into remote power transfer, because remote power transfer into PowerSat will let us build orbital power stations. And I have a feeling that these things, built around Mercury, would be really powerful. Remote power transfer would be fantastic, but it's going to take a lot longer to research that than it would to research nuclear power. So we're going to patch our power issue with nukes. Then we're going to get all of this sort of foundational tech. And then we're going to push on to the Terra Invicta solution, the electromagnetic catapult. See you next episode.